Angela Rayner, disgraced former Deputy Prime Minister, forced out of cabinet just 4 months ago over a stamp duty scandal involving her £800,000 flat in Hove, has reportedly struck a deal that could reshape British politics, and it's absolutely brilliant in its cynical calculation. She's backing Andy Burnham's bid to topple Keir Starmer, abandoning her own leadership ambitions in exchange for a guaranteed return to power as Deputy Prime Minister, plus a plum cabinet position when Burnham takes over. It's the political equivalent of a corporate merger, except instead of shareholders and board meetings, we've got backroom deals and leadership coups. And if this comes off, if Burnham and Rayner actually pull this off, Keir Starmer is finished. Game over. Pack your bags, find a nice shadow cabinet position, and hope everyone forgets you were ever Prime Minister. Quick favour before we dive into this Machiavellian masterpiece of political manoeuvring, hit that subscribe button and smash the bell icon. Over 94% of you watching haven't subscribed yet. It's completely free, takes 2 seconds, and genuinely helps us bring you this Westminster intrigue. Cheers if you did. Right, let's dissect this alliance of convenience that could end Starmer's premiership before it's barely begun. So let's establish the players and their motivations, because this is basically Game of Thrones but with worse haircuts and significantly more disappointing regional accents. First, we've got Angela Rayner, until recently Deputy Prime Minister, forced to resign just 4 months ago after revelations she underpaid stamp duty on her rather nice £800,000 flat in Hove. She was Housing Secretary at the time, which makes the whole thing deliciously ironic. The person responsible for housing policy got caught not paying proper taxes on her own property. You honestly could not make this stuff up. Comedy writers would reject it as too on the nose. Rayner has long been seen as a serious leadership contender. She regularly tops polls of Labour members. She's got the working-class credentials, the fiery rhetoric, the ability to connect with voters that career politicians like Starmer can only dream of. She was absolutely positioned for a leadership run whenever Starmer inevitably fell. But here's the problem with being embroiled in a scandal. It damages your credibility. Running for leader whilst everyone remembers you resigned in disgrace over dodgy property dealings is challenging. So she's made a calculation, a brilliant, ruthless calculation. Back someone else now, get back into power immediately, rebuild your reputation, and maybe have another crack at the top job down the line. Then we've got Andy Burnham, Mayor of Greater Manchester, the man Keir Starmer sees in his nightmares, perpetually tanned, perpetually ambitious, and absolutely chomping at the bit to return to Westminster. He's announced he's seeking permission to run in the Gorton and Denton by-election. If he wins, and he probably would because he's incredibly popular in Manchester, he returns to Parliament as a sitting MP with a fresh mandate, a proven track record of governance, and immediate credibility as a leadership challenger. It's the perfect springboard for a leadership bid. And then there's Keir Starmer, our embattled Prime Minister, clinging to power whilst his party tears itself apart around him. His approval ratings are in the toilet, his backbenchers are in open revolt, his policy agenda is stalled, and now his most credible rival is attempting to return to Westminster with the backing of his former Deputy Prime Minister. It's not a good look, it's not even a mediocre look, it's the political equivalent of showing up to a black tie event in your pyjamas, having clearly not slept for 3 days. The Rayner-Burnham alliance makes perfect strategic sense for both of them. Rayner gets rehabilitation and power without having to navigate the difficulties of a leadership campaign whilst the stamp duty scandal is still fresh. Burnham gets the backing of someone who's incredibly popular with Labour members and who brings grassroots credibility. Together, they represent a formidable challenge to Starmer. Burnham, the competent administrator with actual governing experience, Rayner, the firebrand who connects with working-class voters. It's a dream ticket for anyone who wants Starmer gone. The deal, according to reports, is beautifully simple. Rayner drops her own leadership ambitions and backs Burnham. In return, when Burnham becomes Prime Minister, And note the when, not if, confidence there. She gets her old job back as Deputy Prime Minister, plus a major cabinet position. It's transactional, it's calculated, and it's exactly how politics actually works beneath all the noble rhetoric about public service and national interest. And Rayner has been making her support public. At a recent event, she announced that we need our best players on the field, supporting calls for Burnham to be allowed to stand. Best players. She's positioning Burnham as essential talent that Labour cannot afford to sideline. The implication is clear. Starmer is blocking Burnham because he's scared of competition, not because it's in the party's or country's best interest. It's a devastating critique dressed up as supported encouragement. Even more remarkably, Sadiq Khan, the Mayor of London, has suggested he'd back Burnham's campaign and would knock on doors for his fellow mayor. Think about that for a moment. The Mayor of London, one of the most high-profile Labour politicians in the country, is signalling support for a potential leadership challenger to the sitting Labour Prime Minister. That's not subtle political positioning, that's barely disguised insurrection. Khan is clearly hedging his bets, making sure he's on record supporting Burnham in case this leadership challenge actually succeeds. The obstacles are significant, of course. Burnham needs permission from Labour's National Executive Committee to stand in Gorton and Denton. And Starmer, who chairs the NEC and has packed it with loyalists, could absolutely block him. In fact, that's exactly what many expect him to do. But here's the delicious dilemma. If Starmer blocks Burnham, he looks weak, scared, and authoritarian. He confirms every criticism that he's more interested in protecting his own position than letting democracy take its course. If he allows Burnham to stand and Burnham wins, he's essentially welcomed a leadership challenger into Parliament with open arms. Either way, Starmer loses. The backlash from blocking Burnham would be immediate and severe. We're already seeing Labour MPs publicly criticising Starmer's leadership. We've got former shadow chancellors calling decisions disgusting, backbenchers predicting electoral disaster, trade unions questioning the party's democratic credentials. If Starmer then blocks the popular Manchester mayor from standing with the backing of the former Deputy Prime Minister and the Mayor of London, the rebellion could become a full-scale civil war. And let's talk about the broader context, because this isn't happening in isolation. Labour is struggling badly in government. The approval ratings are terrible. They're facing serious challenges from Reform UK. They've cancelled local elections. They've demonstrated authoritarian tendencies. The party is deeply divided. This is not a government that looks stable or competent. It's a government that looks like it's unravelling in real time. And into that chaos steps Burnham, offering competence, experience, popularity, and a fresh start. The contrast could not be starker.
The stamp duty scandal that forced Rayner out is interesting context too. She was accused of not paying proper stamp duty on property transactions, resigned in disgrace, and has spent 4 months in the wilderness. But here's the thing about political scandals in Britain. They have a shelf life. If you keep your head down, rehabilitate your image, associate yourself with popular causes and politicians, you can come back. Rayner is clearly betting that by the time Burnham potentially becomes leader, the stamp duty issue will be old news, overtaken by events, and she can resume her political career without it being a major handicap. The criticism that Burnham's standing would trigger another expensive by-election for the Manchester mayoralty is legitimate on the surface, but dissolves under scrutiny. Yes, Manchester taxpayers would have to fund another mayoral election. Yes, it would cost money, but democracy costs money. That's the price of living in a free society. And the people making this argument are the same ones running a national government with a budget in the hundreds of billions. The idea that one regional by-election is financially prohibitive is absurd. Burnham's own statement announcing his intention to seek permission is fascinating in its framing. He says he sees the by-election as the front line of the fight for the Manchester way, and he owes it to the city to lead from the front despite the risks involved. The Manchester way is interesting phrasing, suggesting a distinctive regional identity and approach that's under threat, presumably from national Labour policies. And leading from the front despite risks is classic political hero positioning. He's the brave leader willing to take personal risks for the greater good. It's compelling narrative construction. The risks he's referring to are presumably political. If he runs and loses, he's humiliated, and his leadership ambitions are destroyed. If he runs and wins, but then fails to successfully challenge Starmer, he's in Parliament but weakened. If the leadership challenge spectacularly fails, he might even lose his mayoralty in the subsequent by-election if voters punish him for perceived ambition over service. These are genuine risks, but Burnham has clearly calculated that the potential rewards outweigh the dangers. And here's where the Rayner alliance becomes crucial. With her backing, Burnham isn't a lone rebel, he's part of a coalition. He's got grassroots support from someone incredibly popular with members. He's got implicit support from other senior figures like Khan. He's building a coalition that makes a leadership challenge viable rather than quixotic. Rayner's involvement transforms this from personal ambition into a serious political movement. The timing is also perfect, or perfectly terrible, depending on your perspective.